You're all here because you know that making things makes us better. And we hopefully can convince you more about that as we speak.
Making things is good for us. It's good for us in a lot of ways. Psychologically, physically, cognitively, and practically.
And so here's all of our hands, and we believe in hands in our family, and our hands are the cornerstone of our future, we firmly believe. And we really feel that our children must not lose the opportunity to develop their hands and to learn, relearn, re-educate how to make things, how to be self-sustaining and self-reliant. And if we can convince you and more people of that, then I think we have a brighter future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So fundamentally, we know that it's not just our children's education, but our re-education. I mean, we all are here because I'm an engineer, hand surgeon. We have, electronic devices all over our house, but we are, I think, forgetting that the fundamental core of what we need to do is we need to educate our children. If we don't re-educate ourselves about how fundamentally important the hands are in making things and what the health and economic benefits of that, then we'll miss the point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, our hands were once disparaged as blue-collar commodities. I think our country was built on this. We know many of our parents and grandparents and so forth made their livings fundamentally through their hands. And we hope that we can renew our belief in how important they are today and in elevating our mood and so forth. And just one thing, in 2006, the Wall Street Journal said that one of the few sure paths to a high level standard of living is making things with your hands.
Mm-hmm. So just to repeat, this is really important because there's a lot of research, and we're going to cover it soon, that suggests and shows that making things enhances psychological health. It bolsters the mood. There's actually evidence by research by scientist Dr. Kelly Lambert and others who've shown that. So psychological health is really important. Physical well-being, and Alton will talk about this, but when you make things and you're using your upper body to stretch, to move, to grab, you're actually conditioning muscles without even really thinking about it. So when you are integrating this kind of movement of making into your everyday life, that really counts as movement of the body, and we'll get to this later too, but exercise and movement of the body is also an antidepressant. So it's all about living differently, changing the way we think about living in order to combat what it seems to be an increasing cultural malaise. There's been research on how perhaps hand use, actually not even perhaps, there's research that shows that decreased hand use has led to an increase in cultural malaise, depression among us. So we really need to be aware that what's happening here at the Maker Faire, and people in the audience, all of you are here because intuitively you know that it's really important to use your hands to make things.
And so does more convenience that we all are enjoying in this cultural evolution or devolution, does it lead to more malaise? Absolutely it does. We're deprived of these processes, Carrie said, that strengthen our bodies, minds, and hands. Faster is not always better. We know that, again, we embrace technology, but we also know that if we're atrophying and we're developing an apathetic approach to certain things, if we have an app that can, while we sit at the Starbucks, someone can come out and wash and vacuum our car for us, I think we've missed the point to go out and actually wash our car and save $35 too.
And perhaps some of you are familiar with the research about flow. How many people have heard of flow? Yeah. So what that really is deep engagement in a task, something that you stick to, can provide not a permanent state of happiness, but certainly euphoric moments or peak moments. And what happens when we're surfing the internet and we're all over the place and we're skipping around, we are really depriving ourselves of that opportunity to be really sunk into something, finding out about it, making mistakes with it, and living. That makes us feel more alive. So one analyst and scholar from McMaster University, Dr. Andrew Brinks, he talked about how creativity and making things is the original antidepressant.
So, now it was a little intro. Now we want to convince you that there are 5 important benefits of using your own 2 hands to make things. I don't think we have to convince you, frankly, but we're going to try anyway, or we're going to go through the motions. But psychological and physical, we've already addressed. The intellectual stimulation that you get from using your hands is important, and we'll talk about that. We're going to cover each of these. The creative benefit is huge. The economic and practical benefit, I think, is the most poignant right now and the most important for our vitality, and then, of course, the environmental benefits as well.
Mm-hmm. So just to get back to, I think, did we say this at the beginning, that I'm a psychiatrist, psychoanalyst, and Alton is a hand surgeon, so we're going to try to focus on each of our areas. So, antidepressant use, antidepressants are useful for a select population of people, but there's a lot of thought that up to 80% of people who are on them may really not need to be, that it may really be about changing the way that we live and move through every day. The use of antidepressants has doubled in the last decade, and yet we're still not happy. We're still searching. So I think it's really, really important that we all put our heads together and come together at a place like this, the Maker Faire, and think about how we can change cultural values, priorities, to move us all to a place where daily life offers us more. And when we talk about meaningful hand use, by the way, we talked about fit bodies and good feelings. What is meaningful? I mean, what is purposeful hand use? It's very important to point out that does not have to mean that you're building, the next fantastic, 4 Freedoms building that Louis Kahn built. What we're trying to do is say that it can be something as simple as tending to loved ones. I don't know if any of you have ever experienced that when you're home in your apartment or your house and you're maybe folding clothes for your children, or you're making a meal for your family and they're coming over, and there's a sort of a rise that happens within that, just noting that and honoring that, because tending, repairing, domestic activities can be just as important in terms of purposeful hand use as something very lofty and artistic. Oh, but I'm not an artist, right? So we get this a lot. People say that, I'm not artistic. And the beauty and the appeal of the final product is not the point. It's all about the process. It's all about doing something that is deeply interesting to you. Because if it's deeply interesting to you, you will convey excitement to whoever's around you.
And if it's not about the final product and the beauty, then you feel freer to take risks. You feel freer to make imperfections, to throw it in the garbage and try again, to try and fail and then try again and then ultimately succeed. So the benefit number 2 is the hard cognitive benefit. It is very clear, multiple research that we have in our book, and it's all over the place, that hand use does make you smarter. It stimulates the somatosensory cortex. When we were cavemen, and we developed our larger cortical capacity in the somatosensory cortex by building tools, by starting to use our hands and build our tools. That's the only way we evolved. Had we just continued to pick berries, we would not have achieved the same overlarge brain. And this is best exemplified by the Greek philosopher said the hand is the window to the mind, Anaxagoris. And this is the homunculus. I'm sure you've seen this, and this is great, but this is the proportion. This guy's distorted body in these enormous hands is the proportion of the hands the proportion of the somatosensory cortex in our brain that is devoted to the hands. I mean, that right there tells us we just need to use our hands. If we want to stimulate the largest part of our brain, use your hands. So, for all of you, do you think you think better? Do you think you think better when your hands are busy scrubbing or knitting or repairing or washing your car or weeding the flower bed or whatever? Show of hands. Okay,
so
one person doesn't. And so do ideas and solutions come more readily? I mean, yes, of course they do. And it's that freedom, that mindless engagement in tasks that are serving a purpose, but they aren't requiring high cortical thinking, that frees your mind, it liberates your mind to have creative thought. And specifically, the writing by hand, which we mentioned, is a real conundrum now, I think, in our culture. Most recently, Indiana has eliminated that as a requirement in their school system for teachers, for their kids. They are emphasizing keyboarding skills. Keyboarding skills are important, but how long did it take you to learn keyboarding skills? I'm sorry. It takes a long time to practice the art of cursive writing and handwriting. And it's very clear there's multiple studies that have shown that it makes you smarter, it makes you score better on tests, and it stimulates your imagination. Michael Graves in the New York Times just a couple of weeks ago or a week ago mentioned that in his architectural design, he always sketches the first 3 sets of of his architectural drawings. And he doesn't use the CAD-CAM, the computer-aided design that many people use throughout the whole process, because he feels that is the link to his creativity. That's where he gets his imagination flowing. That's where his new ideas about altering the architectural design comes from. And he's,
And playing with fonts by hand, or handwriting can be a form of self-expression for people. Mm-hmm. The way that you write, how beautiful it is, whether it's part script and part print or whatever you do with it, can be a very creative action.
Just recently, you may have seen that story in the New York Times about the young lady who, she happens to be from Houston, I'm from Texas, and she grew up and she just didn't feel artistic at all. It goes back to that, but she loved just writing by hand and so forth. Well, now she has a business in Brooklyn where she's doing the chalk designs. Have you seen that? She gets commissioned to do, at big stores and so forth, she'll do a whole beautiful thing like this of beautiful fonts. She's invented 25 different fonts, and it's just, it's all about her hands, and she's making a great living at it.
So guess what our great scientists and innovators had in common? People researched this. Robert Root and Michelle Bernstein researched this to try to find out what is it about them. Does anybody have any thoughts about what that might be?
The single common denominator. Close. Oh, come on. Okay, that was very close, very close. What is it? One more time. Hobbies. Okay? They all engage in these hobbies.
Thinkers tinker. Years of thinking, constructing, shaping, sticking with it prepares the mind for discovery and invention. Maybe you've heard the quote by Pasteur that chance favors only the prepared mind. That has to do with understanding science deeply and facts and so forth, but also when your body is very acclimated to a hobby, to a task, you can do it almost without concentrating or thinking, and then your mind can go free, and this is what we were talking about before, and thoughts can come to you.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
The aha moment. So that's it. And also just, and you probably know this too, but as an analyst, this is something that I come across a lot in my practice, but what we're really trying to do for people is help them get in touch with those very deep parts of themselves, because that's where the truth is. That's where your real life is. That's where the organic way that you need to be living is. And so when we can set up situations where you can be more in touch with your unconscious or your deeper self, you can find out really important things about who you are, the way you need to live, the way you need to adapt, what you need to be doing in your life. So, and creative capacity, again, everyone has it. And it's about trusting those little wispy thoughts in your mind. It's about following your desire and intuition within the constraints of your real life, but not hushing it or pushing it away or defending against those instincts that come up. Again, embrace mistakes and be curious.
You've heard it paraphrased in many ways, but Ken Robinson, the British educator, said that everybody's born creative, but then we grow out of it. And I think that it's very important that we grow back into it, that we re-educate ourselves about how to reclaim that as what we own.
And just one more thing about that, I just wanted to be very concrete for a minute. When people say, okay, so what do you mean by being creative? What should I do? Well, you can take, I've heard all kinds of stories, taking construction paper and wallpaper in a child's room with cutouts and big blocks of purple color if they want lavender. You can improvise a meal from what's in your fridge rather than running to the store to get the perfect ingredient. My father-in-law from Texas takes our kids in the summer and he finds pieces of wood and helps them polish and varnish and nail them to other pieces of wood to make things. So it's about using what's around you and seeing the potential in what's around you and feeling, okay, about doing that.
It's more elegant than that. She's not really into woodworking, but it's a little more complicated than that. All right, so benefit number 4, the economic and practical, and I think this is the cornerstone of the most fever pitch we need to have. If we teach our kids how to make from the ground up, then we can become again, reclaim the manufacturing, making, creating country that we once were. 75 years ago, 87% of us were involved in the manufacturing sector. In some capacity, we were involved in making things and doing things. Now, 13% of us are. And so that whole enormous growth of the service sector has not served us well in terms of our creative and economic output. And the way things work is so fundamental and we just don't, we pick up our whatever, and we don't have any clue what's going on inside it. I mean, we don't even know how our blow dryers work. And if we start teaching kids how to make things, but also how to take them apart and put them back together. This is what I did growing up in the country. We'd take our Briggs & Stratton engine apart. It wasn't running, clean it up and put it back together, and then it would purr like a kitten. And so, you had to know that. When you know how things work, you feel better. You feel safer, you feel more self-reliant, and you feel that you can then ideate about something else. And a friend here that's in the audience has a great idea, I think, and hopefully we're going to avail ourselves of it with our twins, is that instead of, we've gone to birthday parties where they pull up a trailer and all the kids get in and they play video games for 3 hours. It's great for the parents because the kids are in there just kind of stuck in this little trailer playing video games. Well, how about do what he's doing, David, is bringing...
Where are you, David?
There he is. Is bringing kits to the kids to make something real, something that works, something that moves, something that stimulates them, and spend the same amount of time, but do something that's going to stimulate their somatosensory cortex. Okay? So, and I think that if we don't do that, and Carrie and I both feel very strongly about this, if we don't do this, we are doing our kids a profound disservice. And our future is not bright, I think. So, and economists are saying this, businessmen are saying this. This is not our original idea.
Thomas Friedman and Michael Mandelbaum wrote a book called That Used to Be Us, and they talked a lot about how the economy can really move forward if we start from the ground up with how we educate children and making part of their lives.
Yes, and the only way forward is to return to our manufacturing core. There's a lot of talk in politics, and I hate politics, but there's all these talk of core values, which drives me crazy. But I think our core value needs to be this: getting back to our manufacturing roots, getting back to how we make things and do things, creating new technologies and fostering that creativity in our minds. And so to do that, I think we need to retool our education, reevaluate our educational priorities, decrease all these constant consternation and conflagration of SAT preps, and increase the amount of shop class we're doing. Bring shop class back into schools. Mm-hmm. And Carrie...
Well, I just actually read a David Brooks editorial, which was based on this book that just came out by, I think his last name is Paul Tough. But this whole idea that we've overemphasized cognitive development in terms of thinking that that's the best way to develop children's minds. And it's turning out that really was misguided in some ways. And so now what we really need to do is get back to shop class, that this is really what's going to be useful for our children. And also, it also helps, I think, because there's a lot of people who have a lot of anxiety about academic prestige and pushing kids cognitively, pushing them, college hysteria. It's really not going to deliver them anyway. So we need an alternative. We need an alternative way to define success, to define development, and really that leads to happiness.
I mean, everybody needs to believe that academic success, academic prowess and academic success is not the only viable option for a successful life and happy life and economic future.
And now maybe even it didn't deliver what it used to. So.
And furthermore, hand use and understanding this, how to make things and fosters the self-reliance that Emerson and Thoreau believed in, the stick-to-itness, the grit, the honesty, humility, tolerance of mistakes, all of this, but most importantly, the innovation that is stimulated by that. And we do know that when you when you feel safe, when you feel secure, you know how things work, you've made things, you've built things, you have self-satisfaction, you're happier and you're more productive.
And actually, a lot of research out of the field of positive psychology and other researchers have shown that it's character, the resilience, the ability to tolerate mistakes, the ability to stick to something that actually leads to success in life. It's not scores on tests. So if we want to help our children, this is what we need to help them do.
Right. So cutting edge, I don't think it's, there's some components of high tech that are very cutting edge, and we need to keep stimulating those with new technological advances. But just tweaking the iPhone a little bit, that's not cutting edge to me. What's cutting edge to me is do it yourself. And to Carrie, we believe this in our heart and soul, and we know that all the great countries and all the great economies of the world began that as do-it-yourselfers, people who started building things, making things, and producing things, building, manufacturing, and exporting and selling. And so we know it leads to new ideas, new products, new commerce. That's bringing coal to Newcastle in this audience. So in some respects, I think smartphone apps are the anti-DIY. They're doing it all for us, and we sit on our couch and just go ahead and do all the different apps. And that's that. So we're drawing to a close.
So this is my dad. He used to say to me, I never liked to garden particularly, but he used to say to me all the time that if you're feeling down, if you're feeling tense, if you're feeling like you're confused, or put your hands in the dirt, just put your hands in the dirt. And I think it's a great metaphor for just getting in the trenches of something, getting to the source of something, and building and letting something grow out of that.
And he was a PhD and a dean, but yet he came from a family of stonemasons, so believed in that strongly.
And grew his own tomatoes.
And grew his own tomatoes, yeah. And so, making your own two hands, I think we've already said this, it breeds resourcefulness. And Thoreau and Emerson wrote about this extensively, and we just believe that that's a fundamental core benefit of this. And in the fact that if you are, I think we'll say it here, if we repair, this is the economic benefit for us all, and I think you all practice this and know this, is if we repair rather than tossing it into the landfill, even just the stupid hairdryer, they cost $15 or whatever they cost, take it apart, resolder the wire that came loose, make it work again, and there's one less thing to float around in that morass of trash that's in the Atlantic Ocean that you read about, it's gargantuan. So if we reuse, reduce, and we save money doing it as well. And certainly we feel good and we're doing good. So I think there's the benefits are myriad and great. And my father said, and he's always been this way, I love to find something broken and see what I can do with it. And so we try to do a lot of that, and our kids are trying to carry that on. So.
And this is just another psychological point. In doing the research for the book, what I found was that there were maybe 3 or 4 psychoanalytic articles that really talked about how this external action of putting pieces together, repairing things, making things, can create an internal process where you actually psychologically can change through this external action, because things move inside you when you're moving things outside of you. So that's useful too.
So there are the 5 parts again: the creative, the cognitive, the psychological, physical, the economic, practical, and the environmental benefits. And it fills a primal need. Using our hand fills a primal, fundamental, core need that we have as primitive beings, primitive animals, and also with a large brain. And
making things makes us, and hopefully the U.S., if we can shift our values into being makers and helping more people do that, I think we can all become happier and better.
And it's a little bit about use it or lose it. Use it or lose it, and I think none of us here want to lose it. I would submit that the happiest person in this room, the most self-satisfied person in this room, is this young lady over here. Because, look at that. That is extraordinary. That's beautiful. It's extraordinary. We have to take a picture of that. But it's beautiful, and that's what it's all about. So
thank you very, very much for coming.
5 minutes. Do we get 5 minutes?
Oh, we have some time. Oh, okay.
Comments, questions, please.
Questions, anyone?
Yeah, there you go.
I have a question or statement about scientists and use it or lose it, or innovators. Can you comment on somebody like Steve Jobs, or somebody that's a well-known innovator? How did they maintain their secret? Because I think you innovate and then you kind of make it then the world kind of tries to take you off course.
I'm so glad you asked that. You know what one of his weird hobbies were? Who knows? Who knows what Steve Jobs' hobby was? Calligraphy. Calligraphy.
In college.
Yeah, in college. Yeah, I mean,
he
that
learned
was that was one thing that he was fundamentally, so excited about.
Yeah. Any other? Oh, I'm so glad you said that, because actually this is one point that I wanted to make that I didn't make, which was that, the arts and crafts revolution followed the Industrial Revolution. The arts and crafts movement and followed the Industrial Revolution because there was a craving or a need to get back to the earth, our hands making things. I think this is a parallel. After the technological revolution, now what we're seeing is the maker movement. So I think it really speaks to the human condition and what we really need. We need that balance. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, and there was an article in the New York Times just recently about it followed several kids who have graduated from college and they've eschewed their degree and they're going to work on farms. They're becoming farmers. And I was riding on a plane with a farmer from Illinois, and he moved his kids to another school because they had eliminated, it was closer to the suburbs where his kids were going, and they had eliminated shop class, and so he moved them because he wanted them, they're still going to have their college degrees and do whatever they're doing, but he moved them so that they would still be involved in the shop class.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming.